Hogstye.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Hogstye. This is Alex, your host. I'm going to get to the show in a minute, but first I have a big announcement. We at the Hogstye are excited to announce a new partnership with Symbol. Symbol is a stock market app for sports. It allows you to trade sports teams like stocks and earn cash payouts when they win. Symbol has blended stock and sports in a way that you can invest and profit on your favorite teams and without the high fees, the losses that come from conventional gambling. So what you do is you use your sports knowledge, buy low, sell high, and earn cash payouts with wins. You can join the 3,000-plus early adoptees to Symbol and start investing in your favorite team today. Visit www.simbull.app, or you can visit them through the link on our page, which will go right to Symbol and use our Hogstye bonus. Because if you sign up and use the word Hogstye, you get a $10 bonus credit as you start out. If you think Washington's had a good start to this season, which with free agency, and they have, you should invest in them today. That would be my argument. Go now, invest in them on Symbol.app /the Hogstye, and make sure you use that promo code that we had before, Hogstye, for a $10 credit. And now we'll get into the show. Guys, it's Alex, like I said. Steve is with me, Jamal is with me, and we have one of our favorite all-time guests, Mark Bullock, back over here from across the pond. The master of breaking down X's and O's and putting it out there for all the fanboys on social media and on his new website, markbullock.substack.com. Mark's kind of going and doing the freelance thing himself there, so sign up there.
Can I just say that the Athletic are a bunch of idiots for not renewing Mark's contract? He put the best stuff out there, and for what it's worth, I think they're stupid and they should have kept you.
And the Washington Post, too, because that's where we first met Mark, was when he was doing this for the Washington Post. Bigger idiots there as well. They should have kept him on as well.
Washington Post are idiots for a whole bunch of other reasons, which are another podcast.
Yes. I would like to just clarify, those are your words and not mine. I'm not burning any bridges here.
We're not going to say that you're saying that, Mark. Of course, you had great friends there, I'm sure, and I'm sure you're still in contact with folks at both those publications. But
let me clarify. Yes. I'm the one with the big mouth. It's not Mark.
And I said it all off air. I mean, so you're just saying it on air what I said off air.
I can't not do it, Alex.
I know.
I gotta get it
out.
But
Mark, it's good to have you back on the show. I believe this is your 100th time you've been on the show or something like that. But like I've said, you've kind of come on this podcast since we started doing this 5 years ago. And always just do a great job of breaking down some of these new players. And you got a lot of new guys to break down this free agency class. So
let's start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Mark, what do you think of Ryan Fitzpatrick as a quarterback for the Washington football team?
Yeah, I like the move. I think the main thing is that they're not going to be boring anymore. I found them interesting because I liked the smaller details of how someone like Alex Smith would quickly progress through reads and find the correct check down and get the ball out quickly. But I understand from just a fan perspective that is quite dull and boring to watch. So Fitzpatrick just, saying F it, I'm going deep, that's a far more entertaining brand of football to watch. So
right.
It's going to be more entertaining. There's going to be turnovers, but you're going to have to live with that. There's going to be big plays that come off the back of that as well. So I don't hate the signing. I think he should fit with some of the things that Scott Turner likes to do. He should fit with the offense, which is based around trying to drive the ball down the field, as much as it might not have seemed that way last year. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I like it. I think it kind of... I know some people feel like that means the signing meant that they were going to have Fitzpatrick as the bridge guy and go trade up and draft a quarterback. I kind of felt like signing a guy like Fitzpatrick when you already had Heineke and Allen on the roster kind of suggests that Fitzpatrick's the guy, and they're kicking the can on quarterback to next year.
I know that Ryan Fitzpatrick has sort of the Rex Grossman, screwed I'm throwing deep, reputation.
Chicks dig the long ball vibe, yeah.
Yeah. Now, could you, from an X's and O's standpoint, what is going on with Fitzpatrick? Is it that the play calling is changing, or the play calling that offensive coordinators hand him contain a lot more deep patterns, or is this Fitzpatrick just making a choice to constantly chuck the ball down the field? Or from an X's and O's standpoint, really what is going on?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that more deep shots are being called. For him, they might be because they know he wants to take those shots. It's probably more that he's more aggressive in taking them quite a lot of the time. Certainly in the West Coast offense that Washington had here before Scott Turner, the deeper routes would be alerts. And by that I mean they wouldn't be routes that were primary reads. They wouldn't be 1, 2, or 3. They'd be an alert against a certain coverage. And if you got that look, then you would go to that. But if you weren't getting that coverage, then that route was just to clear a defender and open up space underneath. Fitzpatrick would kind of go off script and go, I like the look of that route anyway. I don't really care about the coverage. I'm taking that shot. He'd also have the freedom to work a matchup outside if he likes the guy, the kind of jump ball receivers that can to win the 50-50 jump balls. He will give those guys a lot of opportunities outside. And that's something Scott Turner's offense does give the quarterback the freedom to do. They quite often, a lot of the plays have a built-in freedom for the quarterback to say, if I like this matchup, I can just take it. And rather than in a kind of more strict West Coast system that is like, against this coverage, we want you to go here. Against this coverage, we want you to go here. It's more our progression that we have on this play is a guideline. But if you like a certain look, if you like a certain matchup, if you just think Terry McLaurin's going to go and beat this corner, throw it up to him and give him a chance. That is completely your however you like to do it. If you see that as a winning matchup, then take it. And so that kind of freedom is something that Fitzpatrick naturally plays with, and that is given to him in this offense.
No, so, I can go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah. So my thing with this one, with Fitzpatrick and just quarterbacks in general, when excuse me, let me be more specific. Quarterbacks, the type of quarterback and the type of relationship they have with the coordinator. Like there's instances where certain position groups will take a hit based on whatever the scheme is, whatever the quarterback it is, whatever skill, whatever talent they have around them. Obviously, some position groups may take a hit. For what I understand, or what I've noticed, without even just a observation, is Scott Turner. I think he sticks to what he does best. Or whatever that may be throughout the course of the season. My question is more so, who do you think, now that you have the relationship between Scott and Fitzpatrick here, and it's gonna grow and develop, who do you think, skill position wise, which unit takes the bigger hit, and which unit will flourish between the running backs, obviously the tight ends, and the receivers?
I think it a lot depends on personnel. Turner has history of using all different sorts of personnel groups, and if he has two tight ends like he did in Carolina, where he had Greg Olsen and Ian Thomas, then he will use the 2 tight end sets. But here he doesn't have that, so he's used the running backs and made use of the running backs, and now they've got some receivers. He'll make use of the receivers. I don't think that they will necessarily see anything take a hit necessarily. It's probably just that unless they draft a tight end high in the early rounds, they would only have Logan Thomas as a kind of recognized receiving threat at tight end. So I guess tight end might take a hit in that regard, but I think the receivers should flourish. But the system is built to kind of work with whatever players you have, and move the playmakers that you have around and try to create matchups for those guys. And so I think it's a case of the personnel that you have and working with that, and then that's something this system does particularly well.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say last year Logan Thomas was really the only threat at tight end anyway, so Absolutely. That's not going to evolve much. You know.
Yep. Ryan Fitzpatrick's interception percentage is pretty significantly higher than a guy like Alex Smith, and obviously Alex is Mr. Ultra Conservative when it comes to passing, but does Fitzpatrick have an accuracy problem, or is it just his style of play where he's throwing a lot more of the 50-50 balls and downfield and whatnot?
I wouldn't say he has an accuracy problem. It's more there are times where he makes just a terrible decision, and he's trying to fit the ball in a window that's just not open, or sometimes it might be that he's throwing to a spot and a receiver doesn't get there, and a safety gets to the spot first, or sometimes it's just he thinks he's got a certain look and the defense beats him with a rotation to a different coverage and jumps the route. And sometimes it's just a terribly bad throw. Like I don't think he's someone that has a terrible accuracy issue. Like it's not that he will do what we saw Dwayne Haskins do and not set his feet and sail passes over the top of guys in the flat, and give defenders the chance to intercept passes like that. And I think it's more him making bad decisions with, I'm going to take this opportunity to try to attack down the field, and that opportunity just realistically isn't there. It's a double-edged sword with the aggression that he plays with, because it will create some big plays, and there'll be some throws where you go, wow, how did he fit that in there? He really shouldn't have, but sometimes it will result in, oh, wow, that was a terrible decision. He threw that straight to that guy. So it's not an accuracy issue. I think it's just a result of the natural aggression that he plays with.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be an interesting thing to watch, just such a different style quarterback, because, you said it at the beginning, we're going away from the West Coast finally and going back to, the kind of football I think that we as Washingtonians are used to, going back a long ways, and that's, more this Eric Coryell style that the Turners came from, that long ball, play with the tight ends a lot. I mean, that's what Norv did. That's what Scott does. Although, I think we should move into maybe some of these other offensive weapons that they brought in now with this Samuel and Humphries, both speedier, smaller, shifty receivers who can do a lot. And, we know that Washington seems to have this, and you called them positionless guys when you and I were talking on Twitter one day, Mark. And I feel like we have a glut of guys who can do, running back, receiver, whatever they need to do now. So, can you talk to me about, what do you see different between Samuel and Humphries, the two guys that were brought in, and what are they, and do you see a common trend at the same time?
Yeah, well, I think both at their best are slot guys, and that is leaves some room for doubt for me as to how successful they will be. I'm sure Scott Turner and Ron Rivera and all of those guys have a great plan and know perfectly well what they're going to do with these guys, and they'll know far more than I ever will. But it just leaves some sort of doubt to me, because for Curtis Samuel particularly, he played as a Z in which is the outside receiver in Turner's offense in Carolina until this year. and he was productive, and they used him on all the kind of misdirection stuff, the end arounds, the jet sweeps, the quick screens, all that kind of stuff. And he was perfectly good at doing that, and that's kind of what his role is when he's playing at his best. Just using him in gadgety type plays to get him the ball in space. But that is more suited for a slot receiver, in my opinion, than it is for the Z receiver. So I wrote this offseason about how I felt like Washington had a lot of those kind of gadgety guys that could play in the slot. And they drafted Gibson, who was a slot receiver in college. Obviously, they moved him to running back. J.D. McKissick was a receiver in college, and he's a running back, but he did a lot of that kind of gadget stuff. Steven Sims is someone that I know everyone is done with from this fan base, but I still felt like he had some potential and he could do a lot of that kind of thing. So that, to me, I felt like they had a lot of those guys that could play in the slot and fill that kind of thing. So when they signed Samuel, I hoped that they would move him to the slot, because that's what he did this year in Carolina, and that's when he had his best year, when it was without Scott Turner and Ron Rivera, and he was playing in the slot a lot more. And I think they will play him in the slot more. I think they plan to move him around a lot more than they did in Carolina. Not that they didn't move him around in Carolina, but they also let him stay at Z and just work outside, and that's not his game.
Right.
So I think they will use him a lot more in the slot. But then they, of course, as you mentioned, Adam Humphries is another slot receiver, and he's more of a pure slot receiver. He did play some outside, and certain motions and formations and shifts and stuff move guys around and result in the slot receiver end up being the outside receiver and what have you. But he is more of a slot receiver that wins with quickness and toughness going over the middle and that kind of stuff. So he's more of a pure slot receiver. That means that Fitzpatrick will have a reliable, steady guy in the slot, and then they can use Samuel as kind of just a pure move guy, and the Z receiver can move around, and it's not going to be, from what I would imagine, it's not going to be a traditional Z role that he played in Carolina. It's going to be more of the moving around stuff. So there's certainly a lot of potential for what they could do. It's just, for me, I hope they don't get bogged down in this is what he did for us before, because he could do so much more by moving around and playing from the slot.
Yeah, people forget that Samuel's a running back in his prior days.
Sure.
So, but I want to stop you at Adam Humphries, because it's not lost on me that Adam Humphries' best year by far was the year that Ryan Fitzpatrick had him in Tampa in 2018. What is it about Fitzpatrick and Humphries that made them so good together?
So I think Humphries is a guy that is a reliable chain mover. He wins quickly with this kind of the typical kind of slot routes that we used to see from Jamison Crowder a lot, with the little break one way and then cut back inside, or break outside and then cut back inside, the little whips and pivot routes. And he wins with good route running and can create separation and win quickly underneath. And that's the kind of thing on third down, third and short, fourth and short. That's the kind of thing that you like to have to be able to win quickly. And his toughness that he has going over the middle, like last year, just watching him last year with the Titans, Tannehill threw him into a lot of big hits. And we saw he missed some games with a concussion last year because of that. But he did take some big hits going over the middle, just winning a quick slant inside from the slot, converting on third and short or second and short or whatever it was. He would convert for 5 to 10 yards, but then be led straight into a safety coming down to hit him, or a linebacker that was in the hole, and that kind of thing. So that type of player is one that will become quarterback friendly pretty quickly. And if you have his ability to win quickly like that on things like choice routes, and as we said, the pivots and the whip routes, those are kind of things that the quarterback can feel comfortable about, trusting him, sticking with him a little bit longer, and waiting for him to break open and finding him for those quick gains over the middle. So Fitzpatrick, while we know he does like to attack down the field, he is a kind of guy that can spread the ball around and work out of empty and find the mismatches, and the slot guy ends up being the guy that gets a lot of mismatches because they can get lined up on a linebacker or a safety rather than a pure corner, and that's where his quickness can win. So I think that's kind of where that connection comes from.
Mark, I mean, and this might be beyond the X's and O's a little bit, but Humphries, you look at his speed, and he's got some speed, but he's not like Samuels or Terry McLaurin, who are like these sub 4.4 guys. He's got average NFL speed, really,
sure.
for a wide receiver. How is it that some of these guys, and Crowder's like this too, they don't have that elite speed, but they're so much better at just making those little pump fake moves or whatever, the juke move to get a corner to bite all the time. It opens up, 2-3 yards for them to make that
technical
play. How is it these slower guys can pull that off all the time?
Well, I think for some of them there is a thing of the kind of muscles you have, whether you're a quick twitch muscle guy or whether you're a slower twitch muscle guy, and some of those long speed people don't have the quick twitchiness to burst in and out of cuts and burst off the line, and they take a while to get up to speed, and that's why you see like a guy like DK Metcalf. He is as fast as anyone in the league, but he takes a few steps to get up to speed, and that's why he's a kind of a deep guy that goes over the top. Guys like Crowder and Humphries and other slot receivers in the league, they're what scouts would say are quicker than fast, meaning they have quickness to go in and out of breaks. They have the quick twitch muscles to burst and accelerate and get to top speed as quickly as possible. But maybe their top speed isn't necessarily the fastest, so they can be caught over 10, 20 yards, but in a 5 to 10 yard route, they're going to break open quickly, and their suddenness will get them open. But you also went into the kind of technical aspect of routes, and guys like Humphries understand the leverage of defenders and how to attack that leverage, how to set up a defender by angling the initial release of his route and widening a defender to create space inside, to break inside, or slanting inside to get a defender to bite inside to create space outside, and that kind of thing. So Humphries is a smart guy that knows how to attack leverage and create separation by giving himself better leverage than the defender.
So I know we've been on receiver for a while, but I think that we can all agree like this is one of the biggest flaws and hindrances to the offense. The past couple of years. With that being said, prior to free agency even starting, Mark, just on a scale of 1 to 10, or even a letter grade, it don't matter. Where were you at with the receiver position prior to free agency starting, and as it stands right now, where are you at? Again, letter grade or 1 to 10. Where are you at with the receiver position as of today?
Yeah, so I probably going into free agency, I like a lot of the guys. I like Cam Sims. I like Steven Sims still, even though most people don't. Kelvin Harmon's got something, and Terry McLaurin's obviously a stud. I just felt like the guys like Cam Sims, Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon, those guys were probably all 1 spot or 2 spots higher than what they should have been. Like Cam Sims is a really good backup Z, but he was forced into a starting Z, and he did decently, but he's not ready for that, or he's not reliable enough to be that yet. So I was probably higher on the receiving group than most people. I guess out of a 10, I'd say maybe a 5, which probably isn't as high as what I might have just made that out to be. But going into the free agency, that's kind of how I felt. It was probably better than most people made out. With the additions of Samuel and Humphries, I think I'm probably a little bit lower than where everyone else is. I feel like everyone thinks that they're a 9 out of 10 now with so much speed, and McLaurin and Samuel outside is going to burn everyone up. But I think while I like both Humphries and Samuel, and I think they can be productive players. I can also see a path for them to not necessarily bust, but not be as productive as what we're all seeing. And kind of as I mentioned with Samuel, when he was with Turner and stuff before, he played as a Z outside, and that's just not his game. He's better working over the middle and shallow crosses and the gadgety type plays and working from the slot, where his quickness, as we just talked about, can beat guys inside. So if they use him like that, I think he will be incredibly successsul. But I just worry that they try to stick him at Z and leave him out there.
All right. Sorry to cut you off. I apologize for that. So the last question, because I'm actually glad, I'm really glad that you brought up your opinion post free agency or to date, because I'm actually in agreement with you with this in terms of people probably feel overly excited and probably rank them higher than what they should be. But my question was, or my follow up was more so, how much of a priority would a bigger receiver be for this offense? Like, should it be a priority? Whether it's even in-house, Cam Sims, AGG, it doesn't matter. But like, for someone to step up or to get acquired, like, what is the priority do you think this offense or could benefit from having a bigger receiver? Because I think the tallest person that's productive is Terry McLaurin. Everybody else is I mean, what, 6 feet and under, really?
I think it's doing Cam Sims a disservice to say he wasn't productive.
Yeah,
I'm just being like, because y'all know that's my guy too. So I'm not gonna I have faith in him still based on last year, the glimpses. But I'm just saying, like, realistically speaking, it was only one person that was.
Well, Terry McLaurin's a true number one. He does everything, kind of. And I think what you're pointing out, Mark, is even these two new acquisitions, they're still role guys. They neither of these guys can do everything you want a receiver can do. They can do maybe a few things here and there. Each one has different things they do well. And that adds to the other role players like Cam and Kelvin and Steve Sims, who are all kind of like, they have one or two things they do good, you know?
Yeah. So to Jamal's question, I would say size for me is a little bit overrated. Obviously it's nice to have a 6'5" receiver. Like, in an ideal world, every receiver you have is 6'5", 225 pounds, runs a 4.3 and is fast as hell, but like, that's just not going to happen. So for me, the size is somewhat overvalued. It's nice to have in the red zone, and for a quarterback like Fitzpatrick, it's good to have because he will give bigger receivers opportunities to catch balls down the sideline. Like Mike Evans with the Bucks was kind of his guy to go and give opportunity balls to. In Tampa last year, I think it was Devontae Parker. In Miami last year, that was Devontae Parker that he would throw it up to and give him a shot. And that's why I did wonder whether once they signed Fitzpatrick, they might have an interest in a guy like Kenny Golladay, who doesn't separate with his route running or his speed, but he goes up and wins jump balls. But they haven't kind of gone all in on that type of receiver. So it's a little bit overrated. It is nice to have. And for a quarterback like Fitzpatrick, who utilizes that size, it can be worthwhile having. But for what this offense looks to do, and you look to attack downfield and scheme guys open, you don't necessarily need the size. If you've got the speed of a Terry McLaurin, you're probably running by defenders rather than jumping over them. So
yeah.
And Curtis Samuel is kind of in the same boat. So.
Yeah. I do want to clarify. I'm not asking a question. I just want to clarify that, receivers, and from my viewpoint, when I asked the question, I think 6'2" and up. Like, you don't have to necessarily be a 6'5", 6'4"
Sure.
receiver, but 6'2", like, is generally in terms of football, because obviously basketball, different sport, but 6'2", like, that's a nice size receiver in terms of height wise, and an advantage you can have on the secondary. But yeah, I mean, I understand.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the most ideal receiver ever was probably Terrell Owens, 6'3". He ran a sub 4.5. You know, he had great hands, great route. I mean, the guy like that had everything. And so that kind of fits as what you're saying, you know, Jamal, a guy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But so I've got two things for you, Mark. Number one, you know, I think Ron Rivera and company have been trying to find Christian McCaffrey. All these guys, Terry McLaurin, J.D. McKissick, Curtis Samuel, kind of the same. Like you said, he's sort of a reformed running back, gadget guy. You know, that's what Gibson is. That's sort of what McCaffrey is. I think they're sort of trying to find McCaffrey. That's number one. Do you agree with that? Number two, I have long maintained on this show that I think Cam Sims could be a good NFL slot receiver in some packages. He did that at Alabama. You know, he's a bigger guy, so I think he'd be a great target in like these drag routes over the middle, you know, that kind of thing. So I think Sims could be your slot receiver in some cases and allow them to move around other guys.
Yeah, with Sims, I personally see him as a Z. I see him as an outside receiver and a guy that you want running kind of a vertical route tree, and you know, your go routes, your fades, your deep posts, your comebacks, your curls, your hitches, those outside routes where he can use the frame that he has and the speed that he has to get open down the field or go up and win those contested catches that we've been talking about. That is where I think his skill set is best. They could use him as a big slot. I don't think that's necessarily something that they will do. I think now that they've got Humphries and Samuel and all the other guys we talked about, I think they've got a lot of guys that will play in the slot. So I don't necessarily think Cam Sims will be that guy, but it's an offense where everyone can move around, and at any given point, someone could end up in the backfield, someone could end up in the slot, someone can end up outside. So like it's an offense that moves so many guys around that everyone does need to be versatile and be able to run an assortment of route trees from different positions. So he could well end up in the slot, and sometimes, as you say, and give them an option. But I think if I want a guy getting yards after the catch, Cam Sims is a nice option because of his physicality. But I think you've just paid Curtis Samuel a hell of a lot of money to use his speed and explosiveness. That's the guy I'd want catching the ball over the middle on kind of drag routes to use his speed to run after the catch.
Fair enough. Now, the first part of my question was whether Ron is trying to recreate the Christian McCaffrey role and trying desperately to find the next Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I possibly. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's a hell of a player, and he does a lot for an offense. I think it's more so that they like what having that type of player does to a defense. Mm-hmm. In that McCaffrey was a running back that runs very good routes and could easily have been drafted in the kind of first or second round as a pure receiver. So I think they like having that kind of versatility because of how they move guys around and the amount of shifting and motioning of players creates a lot of issues for defense. If you're with personnel groups, defense has to decide, like, how are we going to match up against these guys? Are we going to call Curtis Samuel a receiver? Are we going to call him a running back? Are we going to call Gibson a receiver, a running back? Kissick a receiver, a running back? And if we're calling them running backs, are we matching them with base personnel or are we matching them with nickel personnel? And that creates opportunities for mismatches. If you go with base personnel, suddenly you motion a Curtis Samuel from the backfield to the slot and he's on a linebacker rather than a corner. And then you've got a huge matchup issue. So I think there's an element to Turner's offense that he likes to do what we saw with the Patriots, where they had Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, where they force the defense to play a certain personnel package, and then they will go to empty backfields, move people around, and try to find the best matchup and give the quarterback as much pre-snap information as possible. And so there is an element of Scott Turner's offense that really likes to do that. And obviously having the versatile kind of guys like, as you say, McCaffrey or like Gibson or McKissick or Curtis Samuel, to a lesser extent a Terry McLaurin, like those guys all give you that versatility that they can line up outside, they can line up anywhere, and they can run routes, and then the quarterback can just go, right, if I've got man coverage, who's working against the linebacker? Okay, that guy's going to win. I'm going to that.
Who's the deep threat on this team?
This is
It's kind of an open question, isn't it? I mean, they don't really have someone that fits the mold.
Well, McLaurin kind of fits the mold because he has the speed, but
right.
he's an ex-receiver, and we saw last year how much more physical he can play, and he can work over the middle and with the slants and that kind of thing. So my thought going into free agency was they would probably want a speed guy to work outside opposite him, and someone like a Will Fuller who can take the top off the defense, force teams to keep a safety in the middle of the field rather than having him cheat to McLaurin, or keep two safeties back because there's a threat on both sides of the field, and then you have a lighter box to run against. So that's why I thought they would go for a speedster like a Will Fuller or someone in that mold outside to go alongside Terry McLaurin. I guess to an extent Curtis Samuel can do it, but one of my issues with Curtis Samuel, and I've written this a couple of times now, is I don't think he tracks the deep ball particularly well. And so when he's working outside and he's running the deep post or he runs a deep corner or whatever, I don't think he tracks the ball particularly well in the air, which is why I didn't really like him as a Z. And when he's in the slot and you work over the middle, you can have a much better view into the backfield and see the ball coming, and that gives you a much easier ability to track the ball. And that's why he doesn't have an issue with drops and then not getting to throws when he's working over the middle from the slot, because he sees the ball from being released. Whereas when you're working down the field, you're running away from the quarterback. You don't look into the backfield and see the ball being released. You have to locate it in the air and adjust your path to it. And that's something I don't think Samuel does very well. So I guess at this point, your deep threat is McLaurin, but I feel like he can do a lot more than just that.
So maybe that's where they're going to go in the draft if they draft a receiver, would be someone who's more of a dedicated Deshaun Jackson type.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I don't think if you're going to draft a guy early, you don't necessarily have to draft a guy that's just a deep threat. Obviously, if a guy like Devonta Smith were to be there, he can be that kind of guy, but also add more to the offense. Right. But whether he would have fallen to 19 or not, I don't know. But you can find a burner type that's just pure speed a lot later in the draft, and that might be something they look to do on day 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's first, you can't really trust any of these 40 times that we're seeing right now. That's part of the
problem.
They're all hand time pro day.
Yeah, everyone, don't be shocked if somebody runs like a sub 3 before the end of this thing, because they're getting comical with these 4.3s everywhere.
Well, that's what I ran.
Yeah, right.
I was in my prime.
Yeah. I ran a 4.2. So
Yeah. Well, I saw someone ask Darryl Green about it, and he said his best unofficial time was 4.09, and I'm like, Darryl, you were fast.
That's been a rumor for years that he ran that fast.
Yeah, but no one ever clocked it, so how would he know?
I think Ricky Sanders on this show said that.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact.
I think Ricky might have told us that at one point. But regardless, we can find speed. I think your point there is fair. I want to switch sides, though, because we've talked about this offense a lot, and, we really only saw one big signing on defense, and that was William Jackson at cornerback. And I think you had some good breakdowns of him on your site there, and so I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on Jackson real quick before we wrapped up.
Yeah, sure. To me, he's the most interesting signing he doesn't really fit with what they did defensively last year. He he's a guy that can do a lot of different things, but he's at his best when he's allowed to play up at the line of scrimmage and play press and play man coverage. He's very good at sticking to the hip of the receiver. He's very good at jamming receivers at the line of scrimmage. He's a very good man cover corner. And he didn't have the greatest of years last year because the Bengals played a lot more zone and played him off. And he was fine. He plays absolutely fine like that, and he can play that. But that's not the reason that you would pay him the amount that they're paying him. I would feel like you'd pay that kind of guy because you want a lockdown man cover corner. Mm-hmm. But they didn't play man coverage last year. Well, obviously everyone plays man coverage to a certain extent. Very rarely. But they were a zone team last year. They were based in cover 3 and quarters. Those were the two primary coverage schemes. So they were a zone team, and that's why I didn't anticipate them going for a guy like Will Jackson. Mm-hmm. And it makes it very interesting because now I wonder, are they going to go setting themselves up for a big shift defensively and looking to play more man coverage, which is something Jack Del Rio did plenty when he was last the defensive coordinator in Denver. But to play man coverage, you have to have the personnel to play man coverage.
Number one, I was struck by watching Will Jackson's film, how good he was at press man. I mean, that's definitely his thing. I don't necessarily think Will Fuller's all that great at it. I kind of question it too. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time Washington's tried to force a square peg into a round hole. When it comes to players, you can go all the way back to like Albert Hainsworth. Yeah. As bad as he was, they did try to force a very large round peg into a square peg or whatever. So yeah,
and then they tried to redo it again when they switched from a fourth.
Well, that's my point. I mean, and Hainsworth made that repeatedly known, but regardless, so it kind of makes me wonder if they're just reading the room wrong, or they really are going to shift. I don't know if we know the answer.
We don't know the answer yet. I think what we will see from their moves with the draft and if they sign more corners, because obviously they need more depth at the position, whether they sign more man coverage.
They signed Darryl Roberts we're recording this on Saturday. They signed Darryl Roberts like Friday night.
Sure.
Mark, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at him at all.
No, I haven't, but I know they signed him from the Lions and he previously played with the Patriots, which to me suggests that those both the Lions last year under Matt
Jets,
Patricia,
not Patriots.
He played for I think he was drafted by the Patriots in 2015. Those were more man coverage teams. And I believe he's kind of a slot guy that kind of was in the depth chart of both those teams playing more man coverage. So perhaps that is a slight indicator, but he's not like a premier signing that suggests they're definitely going to play man coverage. So
he's a 30-year-old, probably here on a 1-year deal. I don't think they've released.
They haven't released his contract details. Just for the record, Roberts, drafted by the Patriots in 7th round 2015, clearly was on the practice squad or cut, didn't play for them at all, and then signed by the Jets in 2016, and then Detroit last year. So that's Darryl Roberts.
It's always so weird to me how the Jets seem like to always grab Patriot cast-offs, and that goes back for 20 years, and vice versa.
I will say that happens a lot because I thought about that with the NFC East too. Like there's been a few players who rotated in the division over here. It's kind of weird, but I guess it's a sense of familiarity.
Sure.
With your division, so you want to stay in your comfort zone.
I get that too. Yeah.
I mean, I would say a good general rule is whatever the Jets are doing, do the opposite. Right. That's a good general rule.
It's not the worst thought.
They're terrible. They're a horrible organization.
Yeah, but I mean, you are talking about a part-time starter there, so with nothing else, it does kind of make you feel like if they don't draft a corner high, you're not worried this year with a move like that. Jackson obviously covers the number 1 spot. Fuller's the number 2 guy. I'm assuming, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they're probably going to put Jackson on the front side, Fuller on the back side. Because I look at Fuller as more of he goes for the interceptions, so why not have him play on the backside a bit more?
Well, it will depend on the coverages they play.
Sure.
Because when last year they played zone coverage, it was just Fuller played on the right side of the defense, the left side of the offense, and Ronald Darby played on the opposite side. So if they stick with zone coverages, then presumably Fuller will stay on the left side and Will Jackson will play on the right side, or the left side of the defense, the right side of the offense.
Right.
But if they're going to play man coverage, then they'll move around, because that presumably what they'll try to do is put Will Jackson on their best receiver, unless they do a very Patriots-esque thing, which would be to double the best receiver and then put your best corner on the number 2 receiver to try to take away.
Shut them down. Shut both down.
Yeah, try to take away the top 2 options. And that could be something they try to do. And then Kendall Fuller might get a bit of help on the number 1 receiver, bracketing the doubling.
We need to find
the
a free
1.
safety to do that.
Yeah, and that's an idea that I've played with, is Kendall Fuller could potentially play the free safety role in that kind of defense, because that's
I mean, he did that with the Chiefs. Am I wrong? I mean, for at least a half part of the year.
He did play some free safety. He didn't necessarily do it in that role. It's a role that the Patriots had for Devin McCourty, because he was a corner that they converted to free safety, and he played free safety in base. But when they were really playing any kind of coverage, it would be Devin McCourty would kind of get a special role each week to kind of help bracket the top receiver. And I think that's something Kendall Fuller could do really well. But they would still need another safety to play deep in the middle, and they don't have that guy.
Right.
But yeah, that if they're planning to play man coverage, then it will be a matchup thing each week. It will be a case of, do they feel like this receiver needs to be pressed, in which case we'll put Will Jackson on him? Do we feel like we need to play off of this guy? Kendall Fuller's more suited to that. Does this guy run more underneath routes that you can knock off his timing? Will Jackson will press them, or is this guy a guy that kind of runs the more intermediate routes, and the corner can play off him with a bit of vision and break on the ball, and that'll be Kendall Fuller's guy. So that'll be a matchup thing. But if they're playing zone, then it's just going to be one guy on one side, one guy on the other.
You know, Kendall Fuller, fan favorite, nice guy. Everybody loves him. They paid him a lot of money. If we strip away the subjective stuff, what'd you really think of how Kendall Fuller did last year?
That's a really good question too, Steve, because I was thinking it.
Yeah.
I think he did fine. He started off the year better than he finished it. And he suited the scheme that they ran. I would still personally possibly like to see him in the slot a little bit more, because I think that was where he played his best football in his career, was as a slot corner with Washington. When they traded him, people thought he was the best slot corner in the league. I was one of them, thinking he's at least in the top 3 in terms of slot corners.
It's a lot of money for a slot corner, a nickel guy.
Well, sure, but those nickel receivers are becoming bigger and bigger threats. It's interesting because the Rivera and Hurney kind of coalition, if you will, they've never valued corners or secondary players as much as they have in Washington. They always kind of drafted their 4th or 5th or 6th round guys and developed them and said, hey, we're playing zone coverage. These guys just need to fill this role. And that's what made Josh Norman so good. Then they let Josh Norman go without paying him. They drafted James Bradbury. They let Bradbury go. That's kind of what they do. And so it's very interesting to see that they've kind of flipped philosophy completely, and they're paying corners like Kendall Fuller a lot of money. They're paying Will Jackson a lot of money. They're investing a lot more money in the secondary, which I don't know exactly why they're doing that, because if Fuller was a man cover corner, then you'd say, well, they're switching philosophy and they want to play man coverage, and that's why. But because they've got 2 different corners, both being paid, but both very different stylistically, it leads to a question of kind of
what is the plan?
What is the plan exactly? What's the vision with these guys?
Well, yeah, I thought Fuller was a much better slot corner too, and that sort of begs the question: if that's the case, who's the other outside starter? Right? It's not going to be,
you think
Stroman or Jimmy Moreland. They don't really have anybody. So I think it's unless somebody falls out of the sky, as which could happen, I guess. But it makes you sort of wonder what the plan is, like you said, and I don't know if we know yet what they're thinking.
I mean, the idea of that bracket coverage is an interesting one, and I could see if they found a free safety, maybe then you do try that out with one of these lesser known guys, Moreland or the guy we just signed, Roberts. Just put them on the outside with some help from a safety, and you could try that, I guess.
It has potential to work. Yeah. I think you would need a pure free safety that you would be comfortable with playing in the deep middle of the field, and that could be someone like a Trey Boston, or the guy that the Patriots used for the longest time was Jerron Harmon, and he's a free agent as well.
So Trey Boston last week. I think Boston is your guy.
I think Boston's would be a smart move even if they drafted somebody. Nothing wrong with having a couple decent free safeties. We haven't had one forever.
They don't have any right now.
Yeah. If that's the path they want to go down, I'd be fine with Trey Boston. If they were going to play a lot of quarters coverage like they did last year, I wasn't a huge fan of the idea of Boston because he struggles against the run, and quarter safeties are part of the run fits. They have to come up and protect the edge. And he missed a lot of tackles and missed a lot of run fits last year, and that was why the Panthers were willing to move on. So, but if you're talking about specifically for this role, like Fuller could probably play free safety on first and second down or non-passing situations, and then when you move into nickel or dime packages, then that's when Fuller would play the kind of McCourty role of bracketing the best receiver, and then you could put on Trey Boston as the deep guy, and Cam Curl showed last year some ability to play some man coverage against tight ends, but you'd need to find a linebacker against running backs. You'd need to find a slot receiver, a slot corner to play man against slot receivers, so they would still need to find some pieces to that puzzle, but I could potentially see that being a path they take, but who knows?
I mean, say screw it, we're going Apke.
I mean, well, it does bring up the point though. We've got two strong safeties who are both starter caliber. I mean, they're both in the box guys. I think it's fair to say, we've got two strong safeties who can do that. Could you do some kind of bracket coverage using one of them underneath and then putting a corner on soft coverage, over top? Something like that.
That I don't think that would be ideal. I think
I'm just spitballing here.
Sure, Cam Curl was someone when he was drafted, he was a corner converted to safety, and he was a free safety, and I was surprised that they played him as the kind of the big nickel and then moved him to strong safety. But because he did so well in that role, I wouldn't want to move him out of it. So I think you kind of have to bite the bullet on Landon Collins this year, as have him as the backup. Obviously, we don't know how he's going to recover from his Achilles injury anyway.
I think, listen, Mark, I've always thought Landon Collins is a better linebacker than a safety. You could almost turn him into the Viper role or whatever the Redskins call it now. I think that's maybe his real destiny. Am I wrong?
I don't see him as a linebacker because there's a difference in the run fits for a guy that's a linebacker as opposed to a safety. They have a much different responsibility, and someone of his size might struggle in that kind of way. If it's the kind of dime linebacker, then maybe. But as a pure linebacker in a nickel or a base package, I don't love that idea. Obviously, he's a box guy. You don't want him playing the deep middle. And with Cameron Curl being so good last year, you kind of want him closer to the line of scrimmage as well. So I think you kind of just have to bite the bullet and say, well, Cam Curl is our better guy. He's playing strong safety, and Landon, if you don't want to, maybe they could find him a role, as you say, as a linebacker or the Buffalo nickel, as they call him, the big nickel.
Run a 4-2 like they do in college, where you have two strong safeties outside the linebackers.
Yeah, if you want to make a drastic scheme change and run a free safety thing, then sure. But I think the most realistic option is you kind of say Collins is going to be slow coming back from that Achilles injury. That usually takes a full year to feel good about anyway.
And that's their excuse for now is, hey, he's still injured, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to real quick, by the way, give a salary cap update since we've got some more data now. Curtis Samuel's contract. We finally found some details of it, and what basically Washington has done is they've minimized his cap hit for. I don't agree with this, but this is what they've done. They've minimized his cap hit for 2021. It's going to be $3.775 million, and then the following years it's up to almost $13 million in 2022. And then 13 million 2023. He's got a couple voidable years in there at the end, so it minimizes his hit. So the bottom line is, assuming Adam Humphries isn't hugely expensive, which I don't think he will be, they are looking at about 17.5 million or so under the Rule of 51. And then if you want to subtract out the rookie pool out of that, they're at about 12 million in free space. So that's a cap update.
Well, Mark, I think we're about towards the end of the show here. I do want to thank you for coming on, and I want to remind everyone to go and check out your new site, markbullock.substack.com, where they can sign up and, help you out with those memberships, and, also just get piles and piles of data and breakdowns on this team. I did have one request from one of our regular readers who said he looks at your stuff, but it's almost too dense for him. Like you get almost too into the weeds.
Well, look at our commenters, Alex. They're dense themselves. They're morons. Don't pay attention to that.
No, they're not morons. They just have a style preference. They're
they're morons.
No,
they're morons.
You are 2 for 2 today, putting yourself on the record for some wild opinions.
Listen, our commenters know how I feel about them.
Yeah, they do. I
use them for clicks. That's it. So anyway, what Mark told us before the show is he wants everybody to boycott The Athletic.
I do not want that. I do not want that.
No.
Hey, Mark, you want to do a game by game season prediction while we have you here?
Maybe in August
after the draft. Yeah, we don't do that till after preseason. Steve,
it's Mark's least favorite thing to do, so yes, I thought I'd throw it out there.
Absolutely hate it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and now you'll have to do 17 of them, it sounds like. So,
Hey, what do you think now that we've been through the free agency? What do you think is Washington's top draft priority? If you were going to draft in, rounds 1, 2, and 3, what would you be looking for?
Well, obviously the best player available is a thing. In an ideal world, I feel like you're probably looking for a will linebacker, a free safety, and a left tackle. But
you're left tackle, will linebacker, really? I feel like that's what we have the most of. I'm surprised. I
don't think we have one.
No, not a will linebacker. We have. They have plenty. Bostic's the middle linebacker, the Mike, right. and Holcomb's the Sam, the strong side linebacker. Left the will linebacker is the role that Kevin Pierre-Louis played, and they obviously lost him, and they haven't signed anyone to replace him. So that would be the spot I would be looking to fill, probably relatively early on. Tight end obviously is another one that,
sure.
Like, if by some miracle Kyle Pitts fell to 19,
you gotta grab him.
Yeah, you gotta do backflips as you go up to grab him.
Exactly. But I feel like left tackle, is somewhat of an urgent need, but it'd be something I'd be looking at in the first round. And if you don't find a guy in the first round, it'd be something I'd be putting on the back burner, because you've got Lucas and Ron Christian were okay last year. They weren't amazing, but you managed to get by with them for most of last year. And if you can get a Christian Darrisaw at 19, then you're getting an upgrade and you're getting a long-term left tackle for the future. And that is a huge addition. But if you're looking at a second-round tackle that you're not necessarily sure is ready to start or has a weakness and needs developing, that's not necessarily something I would be looking to do in the second round. I'd probably be looking to add a tight end in the second round, or a linebacker that could have more of an impact.
I would think a second round left tackle quickly becomes a right tackle
sure.
in the NFL.
Yeah, sure.
Would you do If Najee Harris or Travis Etienne fell to Washington, would you jump on that?
Oh
Uh,
man.
I feel like they could be
Jamal's
tempted.
laughing.
They could be tempted by that kind of guy because of the receiving ability of them, but I don't think they would do it at 19. Not after the success Gibson had last year and the success McKissick had last year. I don't think they would do it at 19. If a Najee Harris was there at, what was it, 52 or 51 or whatever it is they pick, then he would probably be far and away the best player available, and they might think about it, but
Right.
I wouldn't be looking at running back at 19.
I mean, it is
Go ahead,
kind of
Jamal. You know you want to say it.
So look, I was about to say I wasn't necessarily laughing, more so like I'm surprised that you asked, because Etienne for me he's the best back in the draft. Like that's my guy. If there was a running back to be selected by Washington, that's him. So that's why I was like, oh, all right, you know what I'm saying? I see where your head at.
Yeah, that's why partly why I brought it up. I knew
I
you
see
liked
where
him.
your head at, man. That's my guy.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that at least one or two of there's 3 linebackers projected to be in the first round, I think, and a handful of offensive tackles, but so at least one or two of those positions should still be there. You know, a tight end, we all know there's one like elite tight end in this draft, and then a bunch of guys who are, you know, probably going to be there in the second round still. So I'd assume that kind of means it's either a linebacker or a tackle.
I just can't imagine Kyle Pitts is going to be around at 19.
No, I don't think he gets out of the top 10. But that's why
now the top 10 are all going to be quarterbacks, is what everyone says.
Hey, look, if Hawkinson can make top 10 a couple of years ago, trust me, he's probably going top 7, top 5.
He should.
There's no doubt about that. Hey, Mark, what do you think of Kyle Trask? Have you watched him?
I have kind of. I haven't studied him in particular, but I've watched Florida because I watched Pitts and I watched Kadarius Toney. I didn't love what he did with them. I felt like he gave them a lot of opportunities, but they had to work really hard to make the most of those opportunities because of the ball placement and inaccurate throws and that kind of thing. So he's okay, but
I mean, I brought him up because I think the top 5 guys are going to be gone, and I don't want Trey Lance anyway. And so it seems like Trask is probably the most realistic in the second round for Washington if they wanted to go that way. So I'm glad to hear your opinion about him.
I wouldn't be going quarterback, honestly. I kind of have a philosophy with quarterbacks that certainly in the first round that if you love a guy, you don't risk him. You don't wait for him to fall to you. You don't want to risk a team drafting him or jumping above you and drafting him. So you trade up and you do everything you can to go and get him, and that's what we saw the 49ers just do.
Yeah.
With guys like Trey Lance or Mac Jones or whoever it is that might fall to 7, 8, 9, 10 maybe, if Washington traded up for those guys, even if I don't necessarily like that quarterback, I feel better about it because I feel like they clearly love that guy. They're going to go get him. They think like he fits the offense and what they want to do. But if they were to wait for a Mac Jones falling to them at 19, it feels like it would be Dwayne Haskins again to me because they were happy to let someone else draft him and miss out on him, which tells me they don't love him. And I feel like if you're drafting a quarterback in the first round, you have to go and get him. But with Washington specifically, I feel like the signing Fitzpatrick kind of suggests to me they don't love any of those quarterbacks, so they're not going to trade up for them. Otherwise, why spend the money on Fitzpatrick when you could have just rolled with the rookie and Heineke and Allen and used that money elsewhere? And when you've got Heineke and Allen that are still both relatively young and developing, why would you then go and add a day 2 or day 3 quarterback? There would be another young and developing quarterback. For me, I think the Fitzpatrick signing says they're kicking that can down the road till next year, unless maybe they're gearing up to go and get a Mac Jones or Trey Lance or whoever. But I think they're kicking the can down the road till next year.
I also think if you look at their history, this coaching staff and this front office, these are not guys who like to trade a bunch of future first-round picks, though. I think they're risk-adverse in that regard. I mean, we
Panthers
saw what
never traded up in round one.
Yeah.
In his entire career,
and we saw what San Francisco just paid to move up to 3. So it's hey, maybe you have a shot at Wilson, or you're gonna get Wilson or Fields, But that's they're trading up for a third best quarterback at that point, whoever that is. Although I don't know if you guys saw this, people are now saying they're gonna go after Mac Jones at 3.
You don't trade up. You don't trade up to 3 from Mac Jones.
I know.
I don't think you have to.
I just you see it on social media. It's hilarious.
Sure.
I think someone would.
Because social media is the perfect reflection of society and reality.
Well, let me tell you, I saw that, and I saw it from Dan Orlovsky. I cannot stand him at all. His analysis, like he can break down film
Chris Sims
perfectly.
Too, though. He's another guy who said it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm about to say Orlovsky can break down film perfectly fine. I respect that aspect of him. But when he comes to giving opinions, like that opinion is it's so in form or in line with the stuff that he says.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when I seen that from him. I was like, okay, moving on. They're not getting him.
Who on earth would trade up to 3 to get Mac Jones? That makes no sense.
No,
to me at all.
It would be like you maybe trade up to 8 if that's who your guy is, but
kind of like the Giants drafting Daniel Jones in the top 5 or whatever they did. It's like, my God, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was another. Well, I mean, it was a bad quarterback here that year. That's what we've seen.
True.
Yeah. Mark, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And obviously, it was a Pac-10 show for those of you who love to break down how players are going to play and all that stuff. We didn't get to some of the other major stories about the team this week. That Dan Snyder's buying out the minority owners.
If I can plug, It's Just Business. We spent 20 minutes on that on It's Just Business. So go there and listen for that breakdown.
Sure. And, of course, there was the Jason Wright press conference about the name stuff that Steve and I both watched on Parler, which, God, what a mess.
It wasn't on Parler. It was Clubhouse.
All these new social media things that no one should be bothering with.
I feel privileged that we were allowed to be on Clubhouse. So actually, in all seriousness, thanks to the Washington PR staff for letting us do that.
Yeah. But not a lot of reveals there. So other than they're keeping the band, which I like. They did announce that. So, guys, I want to thank you all for listening. Mark, I want to thank you for spending an hour with us of your day, because we know that the time change always makes it a little weird for us to schedule you.
At least it's not at 2 a.m. for him, though. This time.
No. At least we're not forcing you on at 2 a.m.
Much easier for me today. Much easier for me today.
Well, you can go outside or whatever you're going to do now.
Go eat some fish and chips, Mark.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, man,
Thanks,
I
guys.
love some fish and chips here. We have a good English pub not far from me that does that, and I haven't had it in a year because it's been closed.
Yep.
It's not the food hour, though. I'm sorry I brought it up.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.